Heather, I always love getting to talk with you. So thank you for being here with us today.
Same, Amy Julia. Thank you for having me.
So, for anyone in our audience who's not familiar with your work, you've worked for years as an advocate. And I love one thing that you say about yourself that you shout the worth of people, specifically with Down syndrome. Although I do think so much of the work you do is very applicable outside of the Down syndrome community. You've got a podcast and an organization called The Lucky Few. But I also wanted to just dive in today with you as a mom of three kids, two of whom have Down syndrome. And I just wanted to ask if you could tell us about your family, and then I wanted to ask specifically if you can tell us what delights you about your children.
Yes. So I have three kids. My oldest is 17 and has Down syndrome. My middle is 14 and has no disabilities. And my youngest is 11 and has Down syndrome, a boy. So two girls and a boy. And all three of my kids came to me through adoption um, by way of infertility initially. And um, gosh, there's so much there. So much to the story. My oldest daughter, I call her my scariest and best yes, because when we pursued adoption, there was nothing in my plan that included disability. And we learned about her through a series of events. And my yes to her was I couldn't say no.
Hmm.
And there was just this like gentle push towards her from the Lord to say yes to her. And so we said yes to her, and it was very scary. She had Down syndrome, but she also had a lot of medical complexities, and we were told she might not live very long. I was 27 years old, um, and it was my first time being a mother, and she just changed the game for me forever. So
Yeah.
at that yes, the trajectory of my life just completely changed. I say for the better, forever and for the better. And then we adopted Truly, who has no disabilities. My husband and I are Caucasian. Macy is Caucasian. She's Armenian um, by ethnicity. And then my son is also Caucasian. Our middle daughter is African American and Guatemalan. And so we brought her home, and that's a big journey. And then August joined our family as a newborn baby from the day he was born. We got to know his birth mom while he was in utero. She chose an adoption plan because of his Down syndrome diagnosis. So and then that just really catapulted me into the disability space as an advocate, because the world is not made for our kids with disability, for
Hmm.
them to thrive and find belonging. And so I said, no way, I'm going to make this work for my kids or do my darndest. And so I have had over the last 15 years for sure, I'd say even 20, just the absolute honor and privilege of getting to come alongside disabled people and be in the community as an advocate and an ally.
One of the things that we are kind of circling around here at Take the Next Step is the idea of delight. Because so much of the disability narrative is around deficit and
Mm,
around even identifying, milestones that have not yet been reached, or IEPs that are, in well-intentioned setting goals to overcome, as opposed to really identifying these areas of yeah, just particular enjoyment and delight in our homes and in our families. And so I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit, because I think you do this both in your work, your books, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how how do you delight in your kids, and did you have to learn how to do that in any way?
oh gosh, I love this question. It makes me smile so big because I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Every day, many moments in the day, I look at my kids with Down syndrome and I am so delighted in who they are. I'm delighted in my non-disabled daughter as well, but I'm so delighted in the fact that they have Down syndrome and that
Mm.
I get to know them and love them. It feels like just the privilege and honor of my life, and something that I had avoided and a lot of people avoid. And so that's why it feels so special. And I find so much
Mhm.
light there. It's like, oh my gosh, I actually got in here. Like I got to step towards this and know it in such an intimate, sweet way. So, um, the organization that I run is called The Lucky Few. And the shortest answer is I had this narrative about Down syndrome and this framework around it, around disability, that was real negative, real based on deficit. And then
Mm.
when my daughter Macy entered our life, I just had these moments of being in a space with a lot of other parents and babies at parks or different play groups, and she was the only one there with Down syndrome, and feeling just so delighted by that, like tickled that, oh my gosh, I get to be her mom. Like no one else here gets to know her. I get to know her. And that framework really set us down this path of feeling very lucky to love a person and know a person with Down syndrome. And so something that I find so much delight in with raising two kids with Down syndrome is how unbelievably different they are.
Mhm.
I mean, they could not be more different. Macy and August, and Macy is 6 years older than August, and for many years we called them our bookends.
Mm.
We refer to them that way, and now they're the same height, and they get asked if they're twins all the
Oh,
time.
how funny.
So now Josh and I started calling them the twins, which cracks me up. But they're so different. Something about Macy that I find so much delight in is how uninhibited she is in a space. Macy has this incredible talent or skill or just natural ability to show up in a space unapologetically herself
Hmm.
in a way that's really refreshing. It's
Yeah.
not obnoxious, it's not obtrusive. It's like you see people, like we were at Disneyland this week. We have annual passes, we live close by, and she's delighting. She's 17 and there's a parade and she's finding so much joy and delight watching the
Mhm.
parade, and as soon as it's done, she is on her feet doing her own parade, and she's dancing and she's waving in a way that you see people watch her, and like I know there's a lot of 17 like teenagers around here who in their hearts they're on that sidewalk dancing and like
Yeah.
delighting in what happened, and she just does it. She just does that. And then she also has this really sweet way of being uninhibited in her relationships with others, and she just sees you and loves you.
Mm.
And or if she's irritated at you, then you know it, but it's going to be short lived. There's just, you don't have to guess with her. And when it comes to relationship, there's so much guessing in a lot of other ways because of her language, but I find so much delight in
Hmm.
this. Like she's just such a treasure in how she shows up in the world and in relationships with others, which I love. And then August, um, I've never known another person to be such an empath. August like
Hmm.
steps in a room and he can read what's happening in that room on another level that I just marvel at,
Hmm.
and I find a lot of delight in.
Yeah.
Um it's pretty incredible how he can read a room and a situation and a person, and then I'm just going to say he internalizes it, but he doesn't. He's real contemplative about it. Like he's slow to make decisions and thinks things through
Yeah.
in a really mysterious way that
Hmm.
I marvel at. Yeah.
Did you have to learn how to move? You mentioned just seeing disability originally as like deficit and
Mhm.
moving to a place. And again, not to say that all you ever do is delight in your children,
Oh,
because I'm
yes.
sure there are moments that are not
So hard.
delightful.
Oh my gosh.
But did you have to move from, like, was there anything that you learned or shifted in how you approached your kids? Or, yeah, I'm sure you could answer this for like the next 2 hours, but in a
Right.
short way, like, is there anything that shifted in you, or that other people might be able to like learn from your experience as far as moving from that place of deficit to a place of delight?
Um, I don't know that there's like a checklist for it. It definitely was. I made a decision, and I encourage people to do this, to like lean into what is happening with my children with disability with curiosity and learning,
Hmm.
and like a foundation of, oh, I don't know everything, and if I don't know everything, then there's a good chance I've been wrong about a lot of things, and I know
Yeah.
I've been wrong about a lot of things, so maybe I'm wrong about this. And to really lean in towards, for me, there was, when it's your own child, there's like this instinctual draw to them and this deep, deep love that I think, unfortunately, a disability diagnosis and a Down syndrome diagnosis specifically kind of makes it blurry,
Mm.
or takes away from this joy and delight because of fear
Yeah.
and scarcity. And so my encouragement to people is that you're going to feel the feelings you're going to feel, but really lean in towards that instinctual love.
Yeah.
Um, and let that, it sounds cheesy, but like let that guide you,
Yeah.
right? Like take a step towards your kid. And instead of, and maybe if there's this conflicting feeling, for me, it was like this conflicting narrative of Down syndrome bad, Down syndrome bad. And then I'm like, I love this kid. I love this kid. You know, like, wait, what am I supposed to do with this
Hmm.
information?
Yeah.
And I leaned towards the love, you know, and then that took me down slowly, one step at a time, of this
Yep.
undoing and this reframing, that I had to do. I had to rebuild it, right? Like I had to take it all down, my understanding of disability, and rebuild it around what
Hmm.
was true and
Yeah.
real, which was my kid.
I love that. And I do think that sometimes the social messages we get cause us to even doubt the love that we have and the
Yeah.
delight that we feel towards our children. And so and even the idea of like having kind of like a rational or objective perspective on humanity. And I've realized like actually, like my perspective on my daughter and on many other humans is not objective or rational at all. It is relational, it is based in love. It is, and that's actually what I want. And that quote unquote bias or whatever we want to call it is
Mhm.
actually how I think we should be biased towards one another as humans, is to assume, to be curious, not to assume goodness, to
Mhm.
assume love, to assume relationship, to be curious, to lean into love instead of fear. So I think that's really helpful. And I think it gets to my next question for you, which is, even when we do have that instinctive and even habitual delight in our kids, the rest of the world does not always have that, especially for our children with disabilities. And so sometimes the rest of the world seems to see them as problems. And I think sometimes that can mean that we delight in our children, but not necessarily in our family life, because it
Mm.
looks really different from other families. It's
Mm.
harder to figure out, sporting events or vacations, or you mentioned going to Disney World, or even obviously school is a big thing. And so I'm curious
Mm.
if you've felt that tension, and whether you've learned anything about how to like find delight in the life of your family and not just
Mm.
in your kids as these beautiful individuals that they are.
Yeah, that's such a good question. Like, the feeling the tension anytime I step outside my front door, we're like stepping into tension.
Mhm.
And what I think for a long time in my life prior to having my kids with disability, there was this idea of like trying to fix things and make things work. And a lot of things we say in our family, like this is a tension to hold, not a problem to fix.
Mm.
And so when we step into places that it is hard, right? It is hard to navigate, and the world doesn't make it work for our kids with disability. And even if like physically there's things in place to
Yeah.
help support, the mindset is so skewed and harmful
Yeah.
around what it means to live with disability. And we fight that every space we go, right? It's at the grocery store, it's at Disneyland, it's at school, it's at church, it's every place
Mhm.
we go. There's that tension, and it's just something we hold. And I think that maybe it sounds simple, or maybe it sounds obnoxious, or I don't know how it sounds, but instead of trying to fix it all just to exist within it, um, has also been a little bit of the gift for me. Like when I
Mm.
think back to the delight that my kids have given me, the delight seems like, and maybe it is, and you can lead me a different direction here,
Hmm.
but it seems like it's all good and sweet, but it's not. I
Right.
think there's a depth to it, um, that is actually really hard and complex.
Mm.
And my kids with disability, because I've stepped towards them to get to know them and to love fully who they are and not to fix or change, um, they've led me to this place of like real complex depth of understanding of being a human,
Mm.
and understanding of existing in the world, and understanding that we're going to go into the world as a family, and it's going to be hard, and hard's not always bad. Sometimes it's just hard. And so here we are, and let's move forward, right? Like let's take a step in a direction that we all want to step as a family, and know at the end of the day, um, that we as a little unit are fully committed to seeing the full humanity in each other. And
Mhm.
that's got to mean something,
Right.
like, and standing firm in that and not letting the outside narratives make me question if my kid with Down syndrome is fully human or not. Like
Right.
if they are good or not. Like those answers I know, because I'm standing firm in that, delighting in that truth, right? The depth and the complexity of that truth. Um, and so then those tense moments, all that tension, we're just going to exist in it. Does
Yeah.
all that make sense, or does that seem like woo woo?
No, I mean, I agree, and I think one of the things, you and I have talked about before is just longing for other people to have the experience of our children and the assumptions, not just with our children, but of, kids with disabilities in general, of, yeah, assuming that full humanity and assuming that it is delightful that they are among us, right? And that they're,
Yeah.
I think one of the things I want listeners of this podcast to hear over and over and over again is your family matters.
Mm.
It's not to care for families affected by disability is not simply a matter of charity or even justice on our
Mhm.
society's side, even though I think there is both like charity and justice that, yeah, sure, good things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, like we need you. Like
Mm.
you need to be among us as a society because of the gift that your family is. And I just want to underscore that even in a world where that often it doesn't often feel that way.
Yeah. Can I say something to that too, just
Yeah,
to add
please.
to it? Um, I know as an advocate, for me choosing that like as a career even, right? Like it's something I've really chosen to be very intentional in my actions of advocacy. And I know, and I've talked to parents before and families before that feel overwhelmed by this idea of like, well, now I have to advocate.
Mm,
And my encouragement to families is when you as a family step out into the world, your existence is your advocacy. Like
mhm.
you are stepping into a space and you're saying, oh, we are going to be in this space just as we are. And my
Yep.
kid with disability or me with disability, I'm going to look different, act different. I might cause a little bit of a ruckus. I might be a little bit of a distraction to the table
Yeah.
next to us. But you know what? We're by choosing to step out our front door, by choosing to step into this place and just exist in a world that has been totally resistant to the existence of people with disability. That is advocacy. You just get
Yeah.
to live your life fully. And
Yep.
people are watching for better or worse some days, right? Like
Right.
depending on the circumstance, but really for better because we get to step in the world and say, "Oh no, we actually get to exist in this space and our person, our loved one, our child with disability gets to be exactly who they are. We're not changing them for you. This is who they are. Here we are. You're welcome." Like not with an arrogance, but we know we've been
Yeah,
changed. We've been transformed. So
totally.
so just be who you are.
Yeah.
And that's your advocacy.
Um, I really love that your existence is your advocacy. I think that's like a huge takeaway from just this conversation. I want to also just mention your most recent children's book.
Mhm.
But you've written a number, but most recently you wrote one called "I Like You So Much," and it really does extend this idea of shouting worth and delighting in one another. And you're extending that beyond your own family to all sorts of individuals and types of people, and it makes me think about just what can happen in relationships and in
Mhm.
society when we begin with kind of an assumption that we can delight in one another, right? With what we've been talking about here. And I wanted to ask
Mhm.
you to speak to that. Like, what can happen when we have this lens of delight instead of deficit? What can happen in our relationships and potentially even just like a ripple effect beyond our immediate families?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a really good, deep question, Amy. Sorry. I know what's happened for me, and this might just start to get repetitive a little bit, but again, is this like depth of understanding of the goodness of a human life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, that for me, I can see like from starting from a place of goodness, it just creates bridges instead of walls. Like there's a sense of um an understanding of other humans that we've got a lot in common,
Hmm.
right? Like at our core, we are very, very similar in what we desire and what we need and in this world. And all of those bridges and all of that understanding, I think, are going to create more goodness and more peace in our own personal lives, but in our community as well. And we're not all going to agree on things. Like there are people in my life that I disagree with big, big things about, you know? Um, and that's how that's life. We're not all going to agree on things, but if we can start from that point of like seeing the goodness in
Mhm.
another person, I think it creates a lot of peace in our own lives and builds bridges towards one another that I would hope can make this world a little bit better.
I know for me that when I am in a public space and I see another family who has a kid with Down syndrome, but also because Down syndrome is usually rather visible, but also just another child who is experiencing disability in some way, there is a sense of welcome to me in that
Yeah.
space, even if I'm not there with Penny. That's almost, I mean, they don't even know what it is that I'm thinking, and I'm sure sometimes there are people who think, "Oh gosh, is it okay that we're here? Are we being welcomed here?" But, I often remember that, like, what you were saying just about, our family being out in public can sometimes maybe people don't want us there, and I'm not going to apologize for being there, and but other times it actually can be this source of welcome. You've talked before about shoulders down spaces of
Yeah.
just being able, as you said, to like have a sense of just like peace and being able to kind of like exhale in a space. And I think sometimes our families that don't look like they necessarily have it all together all the time can actually bring some some real peace and goodness
Mhm.
into spaces that might otherwise feel kind of scary to show up within.
Yeah, I think like a sense of being known and understood, even though we're not talking to each, like even though I'm not, hey, what you like the way you're living, or I don't have to really know anything about you, but I can see you out in the world and be like, oh, they don't have it all together. Phew, neither do I. Like, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to fake it this whole time,
Yeah.
you know?
I have one final question for you. It's just thinking about like a young parent who's in the midst of perhaps an unexpected diagnosis or just still wrestling in that tension,
Mhm.
whether that's the tension of the public life versus what we experience in our family, or the tension of what you described of like, I have a kid with a disability. I don't know how I feel about this. I love this kid. Um, how is there anything you can encourage our listeners to do to lean into love? To kind of lean into the delight and the love instead of the fear and anxiety of it all.
Hmm. The first thing that came to mind, and I hope it's helpful and doesn't feel burdensome,
Right.
is is we don't have to ask permission for our kids to exist. And we don't have to ask forgiveness for who they are. And I remember when my kids were real young, especially, there was this pressure that just came from a narrative that wasn't helpful or necessarily true. That it was like, oh, is it okay that we're here? Oh, is it okay that we're here? Oh, I'm so sorry if fill in the blank. And I encourage parents to like to just even if you have to fake it a little bit,
Hmm.
until you get there, to just know, just say Heather told me that I don't have to ask permission for my kid to be in the world.
Yeah.
And if we're going to go to fill in the blank, I don't have to ask permission to be there. I get to
Yep.
be there. And my kid gets to be a part of this because they are a human in this world and they're a citizen of this world. So they get to participate in that. So I hope that a new parent can take that and feel empowered and maybe even a little bit of relief and not pressure. I don't say it with any kind of pressure, but you just get to take your kid into the world and be a part of it, just like however you're able to within your capacities.
Mm. I think that is beautiful and truly I wish that someone had been able to say that to me when Penny
Yeah,
was
me
really little.
too.
So I will receive that on behalf of some other young moms because we've certainly walked in those shoes, and we hope that there are some who are listening today and who might be encouraged to show up as they are, knowing that that actually is a tremendous gift to those who will receive it. So thank you so
Amen.
much for all of that and for the work that you do and for being here with us today.
Thank you.